I love the way that this conversation is flowing because it is about humanity and tech in the same conversation. You know, too often we move those things apart and think that they are opposites when they are not opposites. We need to form an army like that.
Yes.
You know, a unicorn army.
Yeah.
Of people who want to go riding off into the sunset, changing everything into rainbows as we go.
Yeah. Okay. I like it.
People who saved the day, you know, in this past episode were women. To me, those storylines are so important for us as a culture and a community. And if I can sit in the seat in which I have influence over how those stories are told, hell yeah, I want to do that.
I'm E.B. Moss, Head of Content and Client Strategy for MediaVillage. I had the unique pleasure of getting to interview the impressive Bozoma Saint John as her keynote appearance at Moxie's FutureX Live conference. It was really an amazing conversation, so I'm bringing it to you in its entirety for this, episode 36 of Insider Insights. Now, I'd be surprised if Boz wasn't on your radar. She's been a lead marketer for some of the most influential companies in America, from Pepsi to Apple Music, and was hired as Chief Marketing Officer for Uber to help get that company out from under its recent public relations nightmare. And all of this was simultaneous to becoming a mom and her own nightmare as a widow. Hear how Boz prevailed and what she tackles in her current role now as CMO at Endeavor, and you'll definitely hear why she's an internationally sought-after speaker and why there's little question her social media handle of Badass Boz is spot on. So let's get some insights on tech and humanity with Bozoma Saint John.
As the keynote sponsor for FutureX Live, it's really an honor to introduce the final session facilitated by E.B. Moss with our keynote, Bozoma Saint John. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hey, everybody. How lucky am I? Are we, right? Oh.
Yeah.
I thought that it was important, Boz, because I actually studied so much for this. Everybody here who knows me is laughing, but I listened to so many podcasts with you, and the thing that's the through line about you is really your humanity. So we're here at a tech conference and the futuristic conference, but I really wanted to talk about that through the lens of humanity.
Yeah.
Good one?
Good one. Great.
All right.
I love it.
Okay. One of the ways that you described yourself in one of the podcasts was as the career woman super exec mom.
Yes.
Oh, so I'm just going to call you Captain Boz Marvel. Right? Okay.
I'll take that too.
You've really survived some amazing things. You've had personal tragedy, loss, super heights as well. And on Twitter, one of your pinned tweets is all about rising from the ashes.
Yes, that's right. The Phoenix.
So one of my questions is that you've risen through the ashes with some personal tragedy, but you've turned companies around like Uber.
Yeah.
And now with Endeavor, we have Papa John's, who needs a little touch of humanity, and I think you helped win that business to do that as well. So is your pattern of helping those rise through the ashes intention or coincidence? Is it your DNA?
That's a really good one. I mean, first of all, I'm really excited to be here, so thank you, and it's great to be in conversation with you, so I'm really glad. You know, the way that I approach, yes, life and work and all of the things in between, because there's really no separation, right, is through my humanity. The super execu mommy moniker is a little bit humor and a little bit reality, you know, in that sometimes we look at our lives and we wonder how we can accomplish it all. You know, isn't that sort of the age-old question, especially for women, particularly for women, right? Is that, can you do it all?
Right.
Is it possible? And my feeling is that it's not even so much about doing it all or whatever your concept of all is, but can you live your fullest life? You know, can you do everything that it is that you want to do, that you desire to do? It's not about what other people put on you, but what it is that you actually want to fulfill. And for me, the idea about rising from ash is just that, you know, which is that I want to live the fullest life that I can, the fullest experience. And yes, life is made up of valleys and peaks, and sometimes the plateaus where you don't know if there's another peak coming.
Right.
And I want to be able to utilize each and every single one of those experiences to continue to rise, to make myself better, to make my community better, to make my companies better, to make my daughter better, my friends, everything. And I just want it to be the best that it can be. And so even when it comes to work, I do approach it that way. That how can I, as an individual, make the environments in which I'm in better? That I never want to be in a situation in which I feel helpless or feel overwhelmed or diminished by that experience.
Right.
That I want to raise up the level of those environments. And so, I find myself often now in these situations in which, whether it is a crisis moment at a company, or it is an endemic problem with an industry, in environments in which I feel the personal responsibility of trying to raise the expectations of that environment. I don't want to settle for what has been given to me or what is expected. So in Silicon Valley or in pop culture in general, all of the narratives that we've heard about people of color or about women, or put any label on it, I don't want to settle for any of those descriptions. I want to level up.
Yay. Well, we need to clone you. We need a lot more of that.
There are many people like that. We need to form an army like that.
Yes.
A unicorn army.
Yeah.
Of people who want to go riding off into the sunset, changing everything into rainbows as we go.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. Well, let's pull it in a little bit now in terms of the application for brands and things like that. So you clearly have worked for some of the biggest brands in the world, Apple, Pepsi. There are a lot of challenges for brands these days. And at Endeavor, you're touching so many of them. There's fragmentation because, scale is diminished and things like that. And there's AI, there's automation, and there's the question of trust. So how do you think brands need to evolve to really stay relevant today? What are your plans as CMO?
Well, I love the idea of trust. It's a very human thing. It's something that you can't get through AI, right? That perhaps there is this idea, because of course with tech and the way that we utilize tech and interact with it, that we must trust the experiences that we are engaging in, right? Whether it is that you're putting your information into Siri, or you are, putting in your address into the Uber app, or that you're hoping that your information is protected somehow when you download everything into Facebook. There are so many issues of trust, right? But it's a very human emotion. And that's what we need to remember, is that it is the humanity behind all of these advancements that actually makes us engaged in the tech. And sometimes when we forget that, we think about how much faster, we can get from point A to point B, right? We spend a lot of time in engineering thinking about how to shorten those windows. A lot of time at Uber talking about that, or what is the best way to connect this person to that person. If it's a dating app, any of these experiences that are made richer or faster or better through tech are really powered by our human need. And at the very foundation of that lays the trust, in that how are we going to be able to ensure that we are going to be safer or smarter or faster based on our interaction with that product. And so for me, as I think about all of these spaces that we're in currently and the advancements of them, there's a lot of discussion, of course, around what happens next, and how far do we take it? Well, we as human beings will continue to evolve. We'll continue to change the ways in which we interact with each other. And therefore, the interactions that we have based through the technology of those connections are going to be forced even more so from a trusting place, because we're going to have to be able to unload more of ourselves into these very vague spaces.
So is there a future for trust?
Yes, Absolutely.
What does that look like?
And that's the thing, is that I think we have to be that much more in tune then with how we develop our tech and our experiences. It's so interesting. It's like we talk about tech as if it's like some, virtual place, but it's not really. It's right here.
It's happening now.
It's within us, and it's around us. And so as we think about that, and we think about how we continue to create these spaces and how we then talk about them, right? Because that's my expertise. It's like, how do I communicate that you can trust this thing that you are now engaging with, right? And so, yes, the evolution of trust needs to continue to rise, and that if, again, I'll use my experiences at Uber, which is that, one of the biggest pain points was about trust, whether or not I feel safe getting into this vehicle with this person that I do not know, and that I will get to the destination that I require or desire. And in order to do that, you have to build tech around making sure that that trust is not broken, and that I feel safe. And then how am I going to communicate that to you so that you understand the depth of the tech?
Right.
Right.
And as we look at some of the things that Endeavor does so well with influencers, trust is an imperative.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yes. Well, because that's the thing, is that all of these people within the Endeavor framework, so, spanning from Hollywood with actors and actresses that we represent to musicians and athletes and fashion models and Fashion Week and the UFC and Miss Universe, and do I sound like I'm selling yet? Professional Bull Riders Association. I could keep going.
Okay.
All of these spaces require us, again, to engage with people who represent a whole industry, right? Or represent an idea. And so do we trust those people? And if it's representing your brand or if it is in partnership, do we trust them? Are they authentic? The word is so overused, we know that. But it's a real word. It's the only word that actually works.
It's overused for a reason.
Exactly. It's like, do we trust those people when they say and recommend this experience or a product that is tangential to them or an idea, concept, or philosophy? Right? Do we trust them? Do we believe them? And if we do, then we're going to engage. And therefore, I'm going to spend my money or I'm going to spend my time in engaging with this experience. And that's what we're doing every day. And that's what I'm doing every day at Endeavor. It's how to make sure that the conversation between these pop culture industries is an authentic one, and that we're serving the good of a wider community and a wider audience, while utilizing the people who are rising to the top as stars in those industries to take the message forward.
I was reading something today that there's a new app where you can downgrade the quality of your Instagram images just to make them look more authentic. I know. It makes them look a little bit more retro.
Is that what it is?
It's
hashtag no filter?
I don't think it's that. It's HUJI, something like that. Anyway, it was interesting to me because now there's almost like what's old is new again.
Yeah.
And with influencers, now there's some backlash against those who are too perfect and aren't seeming authentic.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're losing some, followers if they're not trusted.
Yeah. What's interesting, we worked on this project with CVS, right? It was called the Beauty Mark campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Which was so great, you know, but it goes to the point that you're making about sort of this reversal of what we expect when we interact, again, with a brand, right? So the idea, the concept is really that when you walk up to the beauty aisle within a CVS, that there are images which are unretouched, so that you can see the real images of the women or the people whose product you are buying, you know, and how it works on you. And it's something that seems so revolutionary, you know, but it's really what we require and what we desire as a community to really understand the truth, back to some of the trust that we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, that it requires that I understand what I am purchasing when I am putting my money on that counter. but also it extends itself to the experiences and everything else around that, right? It's not just CVS. It's like if I'm coming to an event, I need to be able to trust that the people who are involved, first of all, yes, enjoy it, like it, can recommend something to me that will be useful in my life. It's the reason why, Chrissy Teigen is a client of WME. And, of course, she came to her stardom through modeling. But we just completed this event with her, which is essentially like a festival for her cookbook. Because she really enjoys cooking and she's wonderful at it, and she has a great personality when it comes to what the balance between nutrition and a good time at the dining room table looks like. But that is something that is real to her. It's not necessarily, based off of an image that says, oh, well, Chrissy has been in fashion for a long time and now she's a mom and she's a wife and, she needs to look like, that's not it. It's like she's messy and she's funny and she likes to play with the food and she likes to try different things. And so in creating her cookbook and then creating a live experience that was associated with that cookbook, you could bring the whole experience to life. Therefore, when you're interacting with Chrissy on Twitter, you understand that her message is actually real, that this is a real thing that she enjoys and it's not some fake made up experience.
And she exudes a real personality.
Yeah.
But I have to go somewhere.
Uh-oh.
I have a little bit of a crush on the KFC guy now.
Excuse me?
Everybody know what I'm talking about?
We're talking about the Colonel, or who are we talking about?
The Instagram Colonel now. Oh my gosh.
This sounds problematic. I don't know if I'm equipped to answer this question. Whatever question you're about to ask me, I don't know if I'm equipped for it. Any psychologists in the room?
Well, there's... The Colonel's hot now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we're going there.
He's hot. Come on. I can't.
This took a turn. Now, is it the ingredients of the chicken that you are... should we turn this interview around? I think I should ask you some questions.
He's dancing with the Chickendales.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, my point, I'm sorry, was going to be that they have made avatars and VR like so perfect, as opposed to influencers who have to show a little bit of humanity. When do we stop believing in real people if the virtual people are so perfect or hot?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a hot Colonel. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? So let's just put some peace between us.
Okay.
But it's an interesting question about the virtual space and virtual characters. Again, it's like what was old is new again, just in a different way, right? We've used animation, cartoons, fictional characters for a long time to create brands, to personify brands. And so there's nothing really different in the way that we're doing it now. It's just that the way that we're animating them seems a little more real to us than the cartoon-drawn characters of the past. But the truth of the matter is that it's still a representation. It's still someone that you look to and say, okay, that person or that character embodies qualities that I trust, that I like, that I admire, that I enjoy. It's like when I was a kid, it was like Tony the Tiger was hot. Well, not hot like you were talking about. I'm talking about like, this is getting real dangerous again. I'm talking about, like popular. And, for me, like I looked at, it's like, great. You remember that. It was like, the thing you wanted to do when you ate the cereal. It's like you just felt like you could, and he had a little cape, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
It was just it was a very empowering message off of a fictional character who embodied qualities that I aspired to.
Yes.
Right? And I think the same can be true for some of these virtual characters that we're also creating. Now, they may seem more real, they may take on more qualities that feel more human-like, right? And that we know that they're not real, but there could be some confusion about whether or not they are.
Right.
And I think that's the line in which we actually have to draw, in the sand, which is that real human beings and virtual human beings are facing the same sort of dilemma, right? We need humanity in both of those spaces. We don't want perfection. We actually don't. We want to see the glitches. You know, whether it's in tech or it's in the human, we want to see the places in which the seams don't all fit together. Something happens, you know, so that we understand that none of us are actually perfect. And so what are the qualities within the aspiration of that brand or that character that we can draw from to, again, make our own lives a little better?
That makes absolute sense. And, you know, as a CMO and putting it in the brand value context, I love that. What about intellectual property and licensing that? Should everything be licensed? Where do we draw the line, and who owns what?
Yes, that is a tough question.
It is. It's a tough one today.
You know what? Yes. You know, this is a philosophical question, actually. You know, it's not even so much legal. And I think sometimes that's where we get kind of caught. We want to create the lines around some of these ideas, which, of course, as a community and as a culture, we need to, because we need to have some boundaries on what the rules are. However, we get lost in the gray. You know, it's like, what are the things that belong to us as the individual, and what then belongs to us as a community, and what belongs to us as a company? What are the things that we pay for that we expect to then own and keep? You know, and then what happens when that person moves on? There have been so many conversations in the recent past about ownership in that way and licensing ideas. I mean, for creatives, most of the time, you know, it's work for hire, right? And so you are creating work based on a brief or an assignment that you've been given, and then that idea belongs to the entity in which contracted you. It doesn't work for all things, but it is a broad understanding of how we are moving forward in this space as the world becomes more complicated with the distinctions between what then works as an idea in this tech space, what works in the creative space, what works in this very virtual, vague space that you don't really quite understand yet. And I think for me, it comes down to, again, some of these grays in which we're not sure what the answer is. Sometimes it feels like a case-by-case basis, and what belongs to you as the individual, or belongs to the brand, or belongs to the community at large.
Do you advise your clients in any particular direction? I mean, the classic example being from New York are the Disney characters in Times Square. Where does Disney draw the line?
Right.
Or one good example is Hallmark Channel has so many fan-created podcasts.
Yes.
Where do they started to now sort of draw them in and gave two of the fans their own podcast because you can't beat them, so join them.
Literally, I was just about to say that, which is that sometimes, again, it comes down to sometimes case-by-case basis. I am more in the camp of sort of, you know, the open arms, love everybody type of, you know, philosophy versus the make rules and keep people out, right? In that, I think the tide comes. You know, and sometimes you got to go with it. You know, it's kind of like that. I don't know if you're a swimmer or not, but if you're ever caught in a riptide, you know, it's like you need to relax. Go with it. You know, it's like if you fight it, you'll probably drown, which is the same philosophy that I hold for brands and our properties, which is that, you know, if there's a trend coming, and we see it all the time, you know, in culture. It's like there's a trend that is happening, and you are trying to, you know, collect it and put it in a box. You're going to waste all of your time doing that instead of freeing it up and then finding ways to be involved. You know, find ways to make it better. Find ways to amplify it so that it becomes a huge, crushing, like, you know, symphony of creative and ideas. Like, that's a much better way to approach the world and a much better way to approach our creatives. And so even from a brand standpoint, I mean, of course, it's like there are some things about brand property, you know, or IP around brand marks and things like that, which have to be held sacred. But again, it's like as you see things happening in culture, sometimes you really just need to let go, let the rings go, and then watch it create something even more beautiful than you could have.
Do you think that blockchain has a place in protecting IP?
Oof, that's a very complicated question too. I mean, in some regard, yeah. But again, I feel like some of these conversations are so, they're so gray. And that, yes, of course, we need some protections, but can we control everything? No, we can't. And so what are the ways that we can create spaces in which we can further exploration and innovation, right? Because innovation doesn't happen without building on a former idea. It really doesn't. There are very few ideas which are born out of the ether. Right? And so if we spent so much time protecting those ideas that currently exist, we would have no innovation. So we should let it go.
I like it. And then the brand values will rise.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah.
And are there any specific things that, any technologies or tools in the coming years that you really think brands should lean into, things that they should adopt?
Well, there's so much happening in personalization. I don't think we've seen we're definitely not near the end of it at all.
Yeah.
We're probably getting smarter about personalization. It's funny, I often get in, I really am a marketing nerd. I'm wearing sparkles, and so maybe it looks like I'm not, but at the end of the day,
It's very on brand for you, though.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, great. I like to disarm, with the sparkles and distract a little bit. But I think that, there are so many conversations that are being had about, the ideas that are created that we can, again, like sometimes box in, personalization being one of them, in that I have these conversations all the time with friends about whether or not you get freaked out that you're talking about something or that you email something and then you get an ad surfaced to you, about that thing, right? It happens all the time. People talk about it all the time. But then there's the expectation that I go to a website that I've been to before and somehow it remembers what I did there, right? That I go to shop and it remembers that, I just bought that thing last week, so I may not need it. Or maybe there's a reminder about something I bought 3 months ago that perhaps needs a refill, right? There's this weird line of expectation versus the realities.
Yep.
I faced this a lot when I was at Apple and we were developing Apple Music and thinking about our CRM capabilities, right? And essentially like what we would serve up to people who had opted in to receive emails or, you joined Apple Music, you would expect that the technology would form itself around your taste, right? In an algorithm, right? So that while you're listening, it gets smarter.
Right.
And understands the things to surface to you. At the same time, it's like, okay, we come out of that environment. Now I'm in CRM. Now I'm in my email database. What emails do I send to whom? How much of that personalization do I cross over here, right? Because it's so fascinating to me because you would not believe the amount of like angry emails that you get in response when it was like, okay, I'm this type of fan, but you sent me an email about this artist in this other genre. Don't you know that I like this type of music? And it's like, I thought you didn't want me to know. I'm not quite sure. Wait, am I supposed to know? I'm supposed to not know. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. And it was a very interesting sort of philosophical and psychological exercise to understand where the lines are. And what's more interesting is that as time goes on, our ideas about those boundaries keep being pushed, right? People become more and more and more annoyed that you don't know what they like. And they expect you to know what they like. And therefore, if you don't service that to them, they think you're not paying attention. And therefore, they no longer trust you. It's a very complicated conversation.
Yeah, and where do you stop versioning for people? Because you can personalize. How deeply should you personalize? Because then, so I guess if you had a regional menu for McDonald's or something, how many versions of that do you do before McDonald's is no longer its brand?
Right. Ooh, that's a very deep question. We should call Morgan Flatley, the CMO of McDonald's, see what she has to say.
Okay. So back to the humanity. You mentioned that we can learn through AI, but AI is also built by humans and has built-in prejudices of humans, and everything from facial recognition to telling me that people like me want this, so I should buy it. I'll ask this again, where do we not rely on that, and yet people want the personalization? What advice do you give for brands, or what do you see in the coming years for that?
Ooh, this is such a fascinating conversation because of all of these, the intricacies of these examples, where, of course, I want to be able to interact with AI that understands me and can make life better. I think that's the thing. At the end of the day, when we look at tech, most of the time we're developing tech and innovating in these spaces because we want our world to be better. We want our experiences in the world to be better, and that's why we do it. Now, of course, you throw in our prejudices and our biases and all of those things, and then somehow our humanity shows up in these things that are supposed to be better than us.
Yes.
Right? Because the algorithm is supposed to be better. But again, I'll use my Apple example or Apple Music example, which is that, we found that even in the algorithm of like music selection, as I was saying, that the human curated like editorial playlist did so much better than the algorithm-based playlist on your taste.
Yes.
Right? Because what happens is that, you have real music, in the business we call them the golden ears, the people who can really hear the sound and know what comes next. That they can mix the Red Hot Chili Peppers followed by Aretha Franklin into Tupac. A real thing, my playlist. But that perhaps if you knew that a lot of, 60% of my music listening is in hip hop, specifically 1991 to 1997, that perhaps you would only play that particular genre of music, and you would never know that sometimes I'd like a little Red Hot Chili Pepper up in there, And then I wouldn't get that, which would diminish my experience. And so to me, the question about personalization is a moving target still. I think that as we become more advanced and we continue to get used to some of these spaces, it's like a pool, It's like putting a little toe, what I'm saying? It gets comfortable. The foot goes in, a little more comfortable. Before you know it, we're underwater, And so we're going to be in a place where our expectation is going to be about deep personalization, and we won't be scared of it.
Well, I want to go to the personalization a little bit more. When you went to Uber, you said that you had a mission to add the humanity, there's that word again, to the tech, that they'd been so tech-focused.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to read this, you said in a TechCrunch interview when you went to Endeavor that you didn't want to pass up this opportunity to change the narrative around diversity and inclusion. Can you share your vision of what you want to achieve, and can technology help you?
Yeah. I mean, I love the way that this conversation is flowing because it is about humanity and tech in the same conversation. Too often we move those things apart and think that they are opposites when they are not opposites. It's the same conversation. And when I went to Uber, my feeling was that we had lost, or the product had lost its way in terms of using the human need and then solving that through tech, right? That it became like, what is the fastest tech? What is the biggest tech? What is the tech that's gonna surprise everyone? Right. And not so much about what do I need today? And it went from, the beginnings of Uber when, you would push the button and the car would, it'd say 7 minutes before it got to you, and the car would show up 7 minutes later. You get in and be like, oh my God, I can't even believe this, And then before you knew it, it's like, today, I challenge anyone in here, right? It's like, you request an Uber, and if it says 7 minutes, what you gonna do? Cancel. You're gonna be like, this daggone thing, why is it 7 minutes away?
Yes.
You'd be so angry about it.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that it's not so much about, how quickly we can get from one place to another, or how quickly it's going to come pick me up. But it's like, again, back to the safety. Do I feel good? that I'm going to get in this vehicle and it's going to take me to the place where it's supposed to take me. Whether or not it comes in 7 minutes is actually kind of not important. What I really want to do is get to my destination. So how is the experience of what I am seeing then in the product going to get me there? Can I have more information on the driver? Can I send the location of where I am to friends? Can I send the estimated time of arrival to the people who I'm going to meet? Those types of things. Those are the questions that we need to answer in the tech. Not so much like, can I get the car faster?
Yeah.
That's not the answer, right? And very much so, even in the world of entertainment and in pop culture where I am now with Endeavor, I still feel the same way, which is that, you know, our storytelling and the ways that we see the world comes so much through all of these spaces. You know, whether it is sports, live sports, whether it is, you know, the stories that we see on the silver screen, the characters in the Avengers. You know, I don't know if anybody watched Game of Thrones, but, you know, no spoilers, but the people who saved the day, you know, in this past episode were women. So to me, those storylines are so important for us as a culture and a community. And if I can sit in the seat in which I have influence over how those stories are told, hell yeah, I want to do that. You know, it's like I want the stories to be more diverse. I want there to be more heroes. I want there to be more villains. I want there to be more protagonists who are complicated human beings, because we are.
Yep.
You know, and to show the world in a way that can be truly aspirational for us because it feels more human, you know, and it feels more real. And I want to change the stories of some of the things that we've been told that are lies. I want to change the story of the narrative of Africa, you know, and the fact that it's been so terribly placed in our cultural framework as a place of destitution, you know, and it's really a place of wealth and great beauty. And so how do we change those narratives? And can we do that in spaces that perhaps don't even seem right on the nose? You know, can we get a sub-Saharan African Miss Universe? Hell yeah, we can, because they're cute as hell. You know what, I might enter the competition my damn self.
She'd win. Like that.
But you know what? Actually, I do want to make a point on that, though, because I think it's so interesting. It's like even talking about Miss Universe, right? When I joined the company, I'm completely obsessed with that organization because I really do think it's an opportunity for us to change the narrative on women's empowerment, utilizing that space as one of those things, right? We forget that the women who are coming into that platform are more than likely students, are more than likely entering to get themselves on a different platform to be able to utilize it to further their own education or their own businesses or their own organizations. And we forget that the alums from Miss Universe are people who've gone on to do incredible things.
Yes.
It's like there are 5 women on Capitol Hill right now that came through the Miss Universe organization. One of the women leading, you know, jet propulsion research at NASA is a Miss Universe alum. And so for me, it's like, how are we seeing these women and how are we judging them? Can we evolve that so that we no longer talk about bimbos walking around in bikinis, but we're talking about deep, complex women who have the capacity to have great body image potential, who are well and healthy in whatever shape or form they come in, who draw the line across whether transgendered or not, who are of all shades and creeds and religions, who are modest or not, and that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. You know, Ibtihaj Muhammad is a very good friend of mine. She is the American Olympian who won her medal in fencing wearing a full hijab. And it's funny to see us walking around sometimes because I like showing off my boobs. She doesn't. You know what I'm saying? And the thing is that we're both, whatever works. That's exactly it. And we are both incredibly accomplished, really sure of ourselves, highly supportive of each other, and that is okay, that the two of us can exist, and that there doesn't need to be judgment about who is better than the other, that we can both exist in this world and be successful.
Beautiful. You know, when I was looking at some of the booths out there, there's the group of young girls who have built these amazing robots.
Oh,
young people in general who were doing that.
Yes.
But germane to what you were saying is empowering. Are you still on the board of Girls Who Code?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's kind of where I was going, because I love that you do that. And talking to a couple of the girls out there, and they were explaining the robotics and, you know, what we're told as girls, and that's again where AI comes in. Don't just give me the option to buy a doll, give me a book on, you know, math or coding or, you know, what Danica McKellar is doing, Danica McKellar. So there's so much of that where I think AR and VR can help us empathize as well.
Correct. That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. And yeah, shout out to Girls Who Code. I mean, seriously, this organization is an incredible organization. Yeah. I mean, you know, Reshma Saljani, who runs the organization and founded it, is an incredible woman. She just wrote a book called Brave Not Perfect, which I adore. Because, like, you know, if we could be more brave in the world, how much better would our world be? Rather than focusing on perfection for all of us.
There was one point that was made. I come from a radio and podcasting background. Somebody pointed out that Siri and Alexa, sorry if it triggers anything, are women. And there are other voice things that are not task-oriented that are voiced by men. And yet when you get mad at your device, you're yelling at the woman, the voice, right?
Well, look at that.
Just, it's little things like that we have to think about, where technology can, you know, help us all think more inclusively.
But that's another point about diversity and inclusion in this space, in which sometimes we think about it and it feels like a political statement, where it's not. You know, it's not a political statement. It's literally like, can we get more people who have varied backgrounds to be involved in the development, decision-making, and therefore implementation of all of these products across everything.
Use it for good, not evil.
It will make it so much better and so much richer. And we'll have more depth in our experiences because we have more people who are a part of it. You know, I mean, I love meeting people and talking to people of varied backgrounds than me, right? You learn something.
You grow.
And and so if we involve that in all of our development, we will just make it better. That's the whole point. It's like, not about giving up a seat. It's that, like, let's just make the goddamn thing better. Sorry to curse, but you know, I'm getting excited about this stuff.
We love it. So you think that technology will help us for the future if we use it properly?
That's right.
My last page.
What? We're at the end? No, I'm not leaving.
I know.
Right? You don't want me to leave. Thank you, sis. I appreciate you.
I work at a company called MediaVillage, and we're about media marketing and advertising. And one thing that we know is that CMOs spend probably the smallest percentage of their time on marketing. You're dealing with, you know, ad tech and tech stacks and vendors and this and that. So you seem pretty well versed in this space here at FutureX. So how much of your day is spent in marketing and strategy versus this world?
Yeah, you know, that's such a great point, because that's what they don't tell you when you're climbing this ladder. Right? That eventually you're going to get to a place where you don't get to do the thing that you love to do constantly, right? But I find that for me, it is the only way to continue to be inspired, you know, and to continue to want to push and innovate and think through some of these conversations, is to continue to force myself to be a part of it. So I actually spend a significant amount of my time, not just in doing the work, but in talking to people who are doing the work, because quite frankly, they're closer to it. They're going to be able to tell me things that I don't know, right? Because I'm not daily in the conversation. But also, it's like, you know, I'm in the spaces and in the events. You know, it's one of the, what I feel like sometimes can become the detriment for senior executives, especially when you get into the C-suite. You know, that it is the ivory tower. and that to come out of it and try new things, go to the events, interact with, the developers, to test out products yourself, have an opinion, on the things that you're working on or the ways in which you are, putting product into the world, that if you're utilizing it, if you're, involved in looking at the new apps and some of the new technology, that you'll have a better understanding when you're even developing your own things. And so for me, it's very much about getting down onto the ground and making sure that I am sharp.
Well, they hired you for a reason. So this is my last question. I told you I listened to all of these podcasts with you. I did my homework on you, Boz. And you mentioned that you wouldn't rule out politics in your career because everyone should give back. So I don't think you're in this year's pool for president, although you might get my vote. But let's play it forward.
Yeah.
If you were to have a platform, what would it be?
Oh, man. Well, yes. I mean, first of all, I am very supportive of the organizations like Emily's List who encourage more women to get into politics. And so if any of you lovely ladies out here are interested in getting into politics, I highly recommend that we all think about it. And by the way, it's not just about the White House. It's about all of the seats leading up to it,
right,
and that have real influence and real power, because we have all kinds of rules that we don't want. We want rules that we don't have, and therefore can all of us be involved. And it takes mothers, and it takes single ladies, and it takes chefs, and it takes designers, and it takes all kinds of people, not just career politicians, in order to make the change. And so I want us all to be involved, including myself. Yes, I will run at some point.
Good. All right.
Yeah, that's going to be my platform, diversity.
Okay. Last thoughts?
Oh, man. My last thoughts on this, which is about the future, is that it's not so scary.
I love that.
Period.
I just exhaled.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Insider Insights from MediaVillage. I'm E.B. Moss. Rate, review, subscribe on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts. And for a longer transcript of this show and more insights and thought leadership on media marketing and advertising, go to MediaVillage.com.